Hi, this is Sandy. I just want to talk briefly about the way pieces fit together with stained glass. I've been a professional stained glass artist for 15 years now, and one thing I've noticed with beginning students is that you usually stress out about the gaps between your pieces. And actually, if you create your pattern right and you use your foil shears, you should have about a 1/16 of an inch gap in between each piece all the way around. And that's good because what happens is when you go to solder these together, it allows the solder to get down in between your two pieces, and it actually creates a stronger panel for you. You can see here, if your two pieces are sitting together side by side with no gap in there, when you go to solder it, the solder has nowhere to go except on the surface. And so it's going to basically be floating on there, just like that. What you want is that 1/16 of an inch gap in between each piece. It's actually going to create a cobweb effect. So when you go to solder, the first thing that it's going to happen is it's going to fill in this gap between each piece, and when you finish solder, then you'll get a nice round bead, and that's going to add a lot of strength to your panel. So using your foil shears, it allows and compensates for the space for the foil, plus it gives that extra little space for that solder to sit down into. Now, when I'm soldering, I use a couple things. I like using gel flux versus a liquid flux. The gel flux doesn't seem to sputter and smoke and splatter, and it's kind of a greasy substance, and the gel flux doesn't do that. You don't need much. I put it on with a brush and just enough to get the surface wet. I also use two types of solder. I use a 50-50 solder and a 60-40 solder. The reason for the two are that 50-50 solder takes a lot hotter temperature to melt. You can see it doesn't really matter what brand. But 50-50 I want to use, it's a little lower price, and so when I'm filling the gaps, I'm using a lower price solder, and it's a stronger solder. It takes a hotter temperature to melt it, even though I don't change the temperature on my temperature controller. It gives me a flat surface to work on, so that when I go back to finish solder it and I want to get that nice round bead on the top of it, the 60-40 is going to actually sit on top of the 50-50. The 50-50's job is to fill the gaps and to strengthen the panel. The 60-40 is to make it look good. So I do a 4-step process, and I'll show it here for you. And you can also go to our website, and I'll try to get this typed up and put out there. First off, I'll take my panel and I'll place all the pieces and make sure that there's a 1/16 of an inch all the way around, and then the first step I'll do is I'll flat solder the front with a 50-50. I'll flip it over and I'll flat solder the back with the 50-50, and that's going to really add the strength and rigidity to the panel. Then I'll finish solder the back with 60-40, and this is going to be the process that all the air bubbles escape from in between the two seams. So it's going to take the most amount of time, because you're going to constantly find that you're trying to fill in air bubbles and things like that. And plus, if you miss an air bubble, it's on the back. And then the final step number 4, is I flip and finish over the front with the 60-40. Now the reason the two, like I said, it takes a hotter temperature for the 50-50, and so it's going to give me a nice surface to lay down onto with my 60-40. If I only use 60-40, then I'm going to constantly struggle with the heat wanting to drip through the panel. So if you've had that problem, chances are if you switch and start using a 50-50 and a 60-40 combination, you're not going to have that melt through happening again all the time. So again, the most important thing to remember are gaps are good. You want to have that cobweb effect. And if you have any questions, like I said, I've been doing this 15 years. This seems to work the best for me. If you have any questions, feel free to call me or email me, sandy@glassmoose.com. Be sure and like this if you found it useful and helpful. And you can also find other tips I'm building on it on our website, glassmoose.com. If you click on Cart Portfolio, that's going to take you over to our shopping cart area, and there's a reference how-to section there that I'm building up, and lots of tips and techniques. We're also on Facebook under Glass Moose Decor. I try to put some tips out there every week as well. So if there's anything you want to see, let me know, and happy soldering.